Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Parenting with Resilience, the Resilient Parent Summit. And today I am so honored to invite and welcome Dr. Laura Jana.
Yep.
The right way to say it. And thank you so much for being here. And Dr. Laura is an award-winning, wonderful pediatrician, author, and I mean, all kinds of things. You have this amazing background with working with Dr. Spock, and you're a speaker and a consultant. And so I can't wait to hear a little bit more about, all that you do and where you came from and just kind of what led you to have this passion and this drive to create so much for parents and for children. And you're a doctor at the same time. I mean, it's quite amazing.
Well, thank you. And it's great to join you. And I think the easy answer, right, the shortcut answer would be that I love kids. Right now, of course, you can love kids and do lots of things with that. But it's almost, I can say it's a little hard to track my professional course without just saying that has been the unifying, if you're going to connect the dots, it all has to do with kids, but kids are families, families are communities. So it ranges everything from early literacy and injury prevention to nutrition and social emotional skills and resilience. So all of those things, stem out of my really caring about not just kids in general, but really making sure that all kids get to maximize their potential. And, there's nothing I like more than watching the wheels turn in a child's brain or to see them achieve things. But the specifics that you mentioned, yes. So I trained in the hard sciences, actually. I trained in cellular molecular biology and in neurosciences. Math was my best subject. I just didn't know what I was going to do with it because it's a little hard to figure out how to be far on the social side of my interests and do straight math. Then I went to medical school. I became a pediatrician. I did get the chance to meet and then work with Dr. Spock in the 1990s. Which was, serendipitous. I mean, we clearly shared a similar passion. Granted, he was recognized as one of the top 10 figures of the last century, but we shared a passion for kids and families and making a difference. So I went on to co-found the Dr. Spock company in the late 90s, right at the rise of the, sort of the internet heyday when people were still doing CDs. Yeah. And it occurred to me, how do I help get more information, like really good information to more parents? I was seeing patients and I was speaking, but that's not the same as the reach I could have. Mm-hmm. So I jumped, head first into the world of the internet at the time and started doing parenting advice. And since then, it's just been, it's however I find the way to help parents. And that's pretty much almost every parenting website, parenting magazines, books, blogs, you name it. But all of it, again, has that central theme.
That's amazing. And that's really what we're doing here today too. So, I mean, I appreciate your time and I know you've got a lot going on and a new book coming out. So exciting. That's why we're here talking about this today, is just so because we have this chance through the internet and all this to be able to reach so many people from, many different areas. And a lot of people are interested in how we can parent with resilience. So one of the things I really want to ask you about a little bit is how can we be the type of parent who overcomes those difficult times and, knows what to do in this problem-solving type of mentality? And also, how will we as parents be able to foster that in our children?
Right, which is such a good and such an important question. And I don't say that just because it's the basis for the book that I just finished writing, but it sort of gets to my underlying belief in parenting and clearly yours as well, which is, if our goal, and I have yet to meet a parent that this wasn't the goal. If our goal is to raise our children, not to just be rich, not to just be, score well on tests, but to be happy, healthy, contributing members of society, kind of in that bigger picture sense, then part of what we need to do is, first of all, figure out what success looks like. And also, how do we prepare our children for it? And I would also suggest now, and also as we learn more, realize that it doesn't start in kindergarten or middle school or with STEM education or some of the things. They're all very important. But what the early brain and child development world is discovering, and all the research is showing, it starts from the day you have your child, and that we've got such a huge opportunity to set our kids up for success and to be resilient and to succeed in the 21st century, which is not like, the generation I grew up in, right? The world has changed a bit. And so taking a look at those changes is going to be really important as well.
Oh, that's exactly true. And especially right now it seems like things are speeding up faster and faster. You've got a lot of, influence from the media, and parents trying to figure out how to moderate, use of the internet and, electronic devices and all this kind of thing. So I think that it's kind of like a new frontier here.
It is. And, I've jokingly called it the Brave New World, but you have hit the nail on the head with sort of your assessment of what I think all of us in the parenting world are feeling. But at the same time here, I also, my first parenting book that I wrote was called Heading Home with Your Newborn, From Birth to Reality. It's been around for quite a while.
Great.
And part of that was, in writing it, the goal was, everybody always said, if only babies came with an owner's manual.
That's what I was thinking.
To know. And so I thought, well, I will write that. But I also thought so many of the books that were available at the time were either doctor books, right? Very sort of medical, health, authoritarian, or they were practical and fun and cutesy and funny. But where was the mix of both, right? Where was the whole child, where you could read about fever or jaundice, but also have somebody give you some practical tips about how to put a onesie over your newborn's head so you didn't worry about you're going to break an arm or something. And so it was that idea of how do you treat a child like a whole child and give parents the skills they needed. But it was meant to be somewhat of an owner's manual, right? What you just hit on was what we're all feeling, which is, as we deal with all the nuts and bolts, the crying, clothing, car seats, diapers, everything about new parenthood, who has time to look up and watch as the world's going by faster and faster, right? The world's changing. And of course, now in my professional life, I get the chance to go to things like the TED conference or to these they're very mind expanding. And I think, oh my gosh, you know what? When I had 3 kids in 3.5 years.
Oh my God.
I did not have time to go to any talks. I didn't get time to go to travel. I didn't have time to read books unless they were like books looking up something, or reading books to my children.
Yeah.
Somebody used to ask me, oh, did you see this on television? And I was like, if it wasn't on PBS or Nickelodeon, I didn't see it. So what I have tried to do is said, okay, exactly what you said. The world has gone from local and linear, right, in our own small spaces, to global, and it's changing exponentially fast.
Right.
And in fact, one of the things when we talk about how do we set our kids up to succeed in that world when it's changing so fast, whether it's technology or, skills and things, one of the statistics I heard that really struck me was that 65% of children today will work in jobs that don't exist today. Yeah. Now think about what that means in terms of adaptability. And, when people talk about resiliency, it's sort of how do you adapt and adjust? And sometimes we're talking about really, unfortunate circumstances, poverty, adversity, abuse, those sorts of things. And how does that child become resilient, right? And survive that. But all children are going to need to know how to adapt and change and adjust based on what's going on in the world around them. And I would argue all people do, right? As parents, we need to do the same thing. So that's why I love your topic, because you are absolutely correct. We are living in a world where things are changing exponentially quickly when we are used to a nice, predictable 10-year plan. Mm-hmm. I joke in the parenting world that we do sometimes run the risk of doing a bit of breath holding, is what I call it. And I see, breath holding as in you put your head down, you have a baby, you put your head down, you hold your breath for about 18 years, look up and hope that you got them where you wanted them to go. And it's a big rude awakening if you look around and the world changed and you had a different target, right? So looking at the skills that kids need and what it helps, kids, instead of very specific defined skills or jobs, right? What if we say what skills will serve kids well? And I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone in today's world that isn't coming to the realization that things like social emotional skills, communication, collaboration, teamwork, creativity, adaptability, the ability to fail are so high at the top of the importance list. Mm-hmm. Not that reading and writing and arithmetic aren't important now, but you could add the 4th R as relationships. Mm-hmm. Those sorts of changes, I think, is going to make a very big difference for parents. And again, you sound like you share my belief in that, but it's really important for parents to understand that that's what is shifting.
Oh, so much. And I mean, I've heard back when I did my my master's in teaching, it was really stressed that emotional intelligence was actually more of a predictor of success, in the sense that when we feel successful, it's really if we're happy, right? And so, and our success in relationships really is dependent on how emotionally intelligent we are. And I tell that to my son, who's very bright and but it's still challenged in the, the sort of social emotional area. And it's like this, it doesn't matter how smart you are or how good of grades you get if you can't relate to other people. So important.
Well, we could have just had a group discussion with our children to put them all in the same room together. So I've had that same conversation, which is, you know what, I come from a very academic family, right? And doing well on tests matters, sure, but it's not enough. And in fact, I just finished figuring out a way to describe what I have identified as 7 key skills that all children, but I would suggest all people need in, today's world. And I said, let's figure out how to describe those. But, I've said to my kids, I won't be proud of you if you're not a good person. Right. It's not enough to get a 4-point grade point, right? Like that's great. And that does matter. But what I care about more than anything is that you're a good person. I care about your effort as much as your accomplishment, right? So if you accomplish to your potential, I'm thrilled. And the grade itself doesn't matter as much, right? If you fail and you figure out what to do about it, in this world, in this day and age, that's better than just having it easy the whole way through and getting doing great the whole way through. Absolutely. And you can ask whether it's a parent, a teacher, an employer, everyone's coming to that realization.
Absolutely. And so would you suggest parents that want to instill this in their children? I mean, you just gave an example of you're talking to your child about it and really celebrating. I mean, actually, I just got an idea, and I've been doing it at our dinner table, is how have you been kind, how have you been brave, and how have you failed today? And it's and the kids like to talk about how they failed, and I do too. And it's it's not a bad thing. It's a chance to grow. It's a chance to learn. And so do you have some specific ways that parents can, I have so many things I want to ask you, but just on that topic, how can we give our children this message that it's okay to make mistakes, or how to be adaptable?
Well, I'm laughing as you talk because at the risk of sounding like we planned this, which we did not. So I've just spent the past 3 years both researching the sorts of evidence that you just talked about, that support your idea that social emotional skills in 5-year-olds can serve in many cases as a better predictor of future life success for all sorts of things that we really care about, whether it's jobs or marriage or, education attained. Than all of our traditional measures, right? We know that they matter. And what I did was I said, let's look at not only what are those skills, the ones that I mentioned, but how do we foster them? And what I've tackled, there are a lot of people looking at this, right? Lots of people in the K-12 elementary education, higher education, workforce development, you name it. So that's my first message is, we're not alone as parents. We're part of a much bigger discussion. But I will suggest to all parents watching, we are the sort of gold standard. We are what everybody else depends on. We're the upstream for everyone else. Because what we know, and I knew you were going to do that. Because that's not meant to make parents feel any more guilty, stressed out. You know what it is? It's all the talking, cooing, singing, reading books to babies, smiling, enjoying when you make eye contact and your baby, smiles back at you for the first time, realizing that's not just cute, and it is very cute, and it's heartwarming. And those of us who love children, that just it warms your heart when you hear it. It's also building their brains. It's strengthening connections in their brains that will set them up for exactly those skills you're talking about. So when you ask me, how would I do that? What I focused on in the book that you mentioned at the outset, which is called The Toddler Brain, Nurture the Skills Today That Will Shape Your Child's Tomorrow.
Love that.
I did a bit of the overview that we've been talking about. What's going on in the parenting world? What's going on in the world around us? And then why early? Why should we be looking at the earliest years? All the way along is important, but don't miss that early opportunity. And then in each chapter, there's 7 key skills that I address. And interestingly, I went on the search for a word. We say all these other skills, right? There was cognitive and IQ skills, and then there were the other skills.
Yeah.
And my basic point would be, since when does other do justice to a set of skills that we want everybody to understand are so important? Because calling them other, soft, and non-cognitive makes them sound not so important.
Right.
So what I did, I called them key skills, which sounds like K-E-Y, but it's spelled Q-I. And some people recognize that as chi or key, which in essence has a connotation of positive life force.
Yeah.
It has crossed centuries and cultures having that kind of meaning. In the healthcare world, QI is quality improvement, where you rapidly try something, adjust, improve. Yep, that works for our parenting goals, right? And the beauty of it is it's the complement to IQ. IQ is still important in the sense of cognitive skills and learning to read and doing math, but IQ and QI.
Yes.
So if you'd like me to give the preview of what these skills are, and then we can always discuss specifics. What I did is I broke them down into very easy to understand, easy to recognize skills. And then I said, here's what they look like in the first 5 years. And here's what you as a parent can do. Simple games and activities and ideas for fostering and cultivating those skills.
Awesome.
Right there, they're me, we, why, will, wiggle, wobble, and what if skills.
Awesome. Wow. I love that. And they're so easy to remember with these kind of quick mnemonic devices. And I just love the IQ and the QI. This is just brilliant that you've coined this. Wow.
Well, thank you. Because, it was so interesting. I've got such a fortunate vantage point that I can go between the worlds of innovation, Silicon Valley, TED, and then also cross far into the worlds of early childhood education, parenting, pediatrics. And what I realized, it was this revelation that we're all talking about the same thing, except that we as parents are sitting at this critical point where we are the upstream to all of the rest of it. Yeah. And again, it's very empowering because instead of this rat race to get our kids to accomplish milestones faster and get the right answer and, and achieve.
Exactly.
That's really stress inducing. But if I tell you that when you smile at your baby and your baby smiles back, and that if you enjoy reading Goodnight Moon to your baby every single night, if I tell you that what you're doing, that's not just being a good parent, but you are literally setting your child up for success, wiring the brain. And I know we share this concept of you're literally hardwiring your baby's brain and your young child's brain for the skills that everybody is after, that will make them successful.
Right, and adaptability and creativity. And these are the subjects that you just brilliantly put together in your TEDx talk that I absolutely loved. It was so revolutionary. That's a
revelation. Yeah, revolutionary.
But so can you tell us a little bit more about that and the concept behind?
Sure. So, right as I was coming to this conclusion, I was, and of course I've spent most of my time writing in the parenting space. I write parenting and children's books, but it's all been geared around sort of life enhancing, helping parents, practical, right? There's no guilt involved. Don't worry about the guilt part. Just focus on what you want to do and keep trying to do a good job of it.
Right.
And then I thought, wait a second, I think I just struck on something a little bigger than that, and again, in my TED talk, I mentioned, I had a colleague hand me a book and say, he'd just written a book and he said, I'd love to know what you think of it. And I thought, sure, I read lots of books. I edit a lot of content. So I thought, sure, and I was like, but does he really want to know? He was a very highly prominent person. Does he really want to know what I thought? And I was assured, oh yes, he really wanted to know. So I read the book and I thought, oh wow, this is really good. Like this fits with my philosophy of parenting and always a work in progress and things that I always said, which wouldn't be so surprising if the person hadn't been Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, right? Who does not have children, who's a very deep thinker, and had written a book called The Startup of You, which was very much sort of Silicon Valley, innovation, business, what it takes to succeed today. What would you do if you treated yourself like a startup? And I could not shake the idea of, wait a minute, what if we did the startup of your baby, right? Like this analogous. That's where I came to start going, okay, Reid has been known as saying he sees the world in connections. And in my conversation with him, I said, so do I. We're just talking about different ends of the connection spectrum. I'm talking about connecting neurons in the developing brain, the critical connection between caring, responsive adults, hopefully parent, but any caring, responsive adult is absolutely critical. Beyond food and water, right? Liquid, it's a caring, responsive adult in a baby's life. And then connections within the community and with teachers and everybody else, that determines a child's life trajectory. So I said, I believe that the world's all about connections too, right? And if you look at LinkedIn's tagline, their tagline is relationships matter. Agreed, right? That's where I thought, how do I put this all together? And the title of my talk is 5 Connections that will change children's lives. Mm-hmm. I thought, what if I focus this on what connections do we need to make? we have all this, like you started out saying, so much information, so many pieces of advice, so many books, so many. What if we took what we have and we made some really interesting connections between what the business world is discovering about those skills and what the brain science in babies is discovering? And I connected those two, and the response has been incredible. But also it gives me hope that, you know what, we can all come around this idea that supporting parents is really important, that caring, responsive adults are the single most important thing that we can be for our children, right? It's not the amount of money you have. It's not how early they learn to read a book. It's that they love to learn to read, they love to read books. So that's maybe more than you wanted to know about that, but it really did serve as this sort of introductory thought to this much bigger realm, and what then became my book I've just written.
Awesome. And so, yes, and the book that you have coming out is, you said that it's called The Toddler Brain.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the
subtitle is Nurture the Skills Today That Will Shape Your Child's Tomorrow.
Right. And that's really what we're just talking about is how you can realize the things that we're doing and the connections that we make and the relationships. So being that supportive, nurturing parent. And I think what you just said about supporting parents being important is, it's kind of mind-boggling that we don't have more of a infrastructure of support, that people like you are doing this on your own and creating these amazing organizations, books, and things for children, things for parents. And that's what we have to look for. We have to seek out, the experts on our own. But maybe we'll start a movement,
a lot of, and I referenced this at the beginning of my TED Talk, but a lot of what I see as being very hopeful is, we're in a very divided world, a divided country. Everybody's got strong opinions. We seem to be getting further and further towards opposites, right? Like it's very, and what I have found that everyone can come to an agreement on, and that we all share this idea that we care about the children. The children are our future. The other thing that we know is the more that we have, there are people who need evidence. And if evidence is neuroscience research or economic research or whatever it may be, that the more we can do to speak a common language and come together around this idea of supporting parents. And, the other thing that I find, I spend a lot of time working especially advocating for families who are at most risk. Children's life trajectories are very concerning if they grow up in the wrong zip code, right? We can predict, and it's really sad to think about being able to predict a child's future life outcomes based on whether they're born into poverty or facing adversity. But the thing that I have found is it's not them and then parents like us, right? Mm-hmm. There's something universal about parents and loving their children, and the things that we're talking about, the skills that we can give children, you don't have to buy them, right? So that's where I think, what part of what I did. So the book I just wrote is mainstream parenting book. And I certainly hope people will look at it, use it, help improve, really think and enjoy what they're doing with their own children. Yes. But I saved the last chapter just to make the point where I said, if you also want to take it a step further, if you believe, based on everything I put in the book, that a caring, responsive adult is absolutely critical to a child's well-being, right down to the level of that we know a baby's brain is socially gated. Their brains are not sponges, right? We always hear babies are like sponges. They're sponges when they have the benefit of social interaction. It's like a switch turns on, and now they're sponges. Think what that means for those children born in circumstances where their parents aren't able, they don't know that, they don't have the skills themselves, they're working multiple jobs, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. If we band together around what we all believe in and care about as parents, mm-hmm. I would suggest our kids will be better off for it. The world will be a better place. Like, it's what do we all believe in? And that's where I love being in the space of what's best for children and empathy and kindness and making a better world, not just who potty trains fastest, who learns to read first, those sorts of things.
Right. So it's like, it sounds to me what you're saying is it doesn't matter how much money you spend on your children or how much you invest in their education and these things. It matters more about how much time you spend with them and how much of yourself that you give and kind of showing them, just building these relationships that they can.
Right. And, getting back to the core topic that we're addressing, so resilience, right? To the best of my knowledge, you can't pay for resilience, right? Like you can't buy it. And the problem is, in fact, we actually see in some cases, people who are researching this, that if kids who are faced with adversity manage to get off this, dismal life trajectory that they're on, and they become successful, they are more likely to be more successful than those kids who never had to face any adversity, which gets to my personal favorite. I shouldn't say this because I actually like all 7 key skills, but the one that I was just so excited when I thought of how to describe it. I'm like, everybody talks about adaptability, ability to fail, brush yourself off, get up and try again, right? Like that. What do you call that? And so I called it wobble skills. And it's based on Weeble's wobble, but they don't fall down. Yeah. And this idea that we've gone too far in the direction of never letting our children wobble, right? If you think of toddlers, right? Toddling, almost by definition, the word conveys that they're going to fall down, right? Because you'd say they were walking if they were good at it. But when they're learning to do it, they're toddling. And as parents, if we don't resist the urge to protect them from ever falling down, whether it's, literally or figuratively, so we don't ever let them wobble, then we're setting them up to be less resilient. They don't know what to do when they are faced with a challenge or a failure or, a skinned knee. So that's where looking at resilience, sometimes people think it's just a discussion of kids and families faced with poverty or adversity. It's not. It's all of us. How do we help our kids learn to adapt and adjust and succeed in whatever the world brings towards us, right? It's changing and it's big and it's globalizing. But that's what I look at the word resilience and go, it's so powerful, and there's so much that parents can do to help foster it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And just having that one kind of core ability to wobble and to come back, that whatever is thrown out at them in the world, because you just don't know. I mean, we do have things happen. There's death, there's divorce, there's illness, their family members. But if you give them those early set of skills where you're not, coddling too much, but you're still, but also not creating that intense stress response either, right? So there's this balance.
If you get deep into the science, there's a very strong basis in terms of science around stress, right? And the levels of stress, and it's measured and it's studied, and its impact on the developing brain and things. And I touch on that in the book because I wanted to give people a sense of how much we now know. But the degrees of stress, not all stress is bad, right? If you think about the stress that you or I have in a day, right? You have a writing deadline, you've got to get somewhere on time, but you got to finish something. That's not bad stress, right? Like that, sometimes that helps you get stuff done or motivates you. And then there's some of the things that you talk about, like that you just mentioned, whether it's, a death in the family or of a pet, something happens, somebody breaks an arm. The stress around some of those life events, it's not ideal, but the goal is, and what people are finding is that having a caring, responsive adult who helps you manage that stress, to mitigate it, to dampen the effects of those sort of stressful but expected life circumstances makes all the difference in the world. And that's where it's not just a matter of rich or poor, or the haves and the have-nots, or how many things you buy and how many toys you have and what grades you have. It's, are you in a setting where you become capable? And children can learn this very early, incrementally. How do you adjust to failure? How do you manage emotions? How do you get up and try again? So that's where it's funny, because when you distill it down to the first 5 years, sometimes things sound so basic, right? You're like, does that really make a difference in like save the world kind of terms? Yeah. And I'm just making the point that I believe it is. If we look at how interconnected everything is, we've got every reason to believe that what we do early is really important in helping our children.
It's amazing. And I just thought of, it's like it never really stops. I mean, as we grow up and we become parents, it's a whole new set of challenges that we are I mean, you mentioned having 3 kids in 3 years, and that's a whole different experience than another parent. And I had 5 in 9 years. And that is, I'm like you. And that's why I'm so glad that you're here to talk about these things, because some of us don't have the time to sit down and read the whole book or figure out what's the best, kind of resources that we can find to support ourselves and to educate ourselves. So
you just made me laugh when you said that, because I'll let you in on a little secret, which is I amused myself while I was writing this book, because I pride myself on being a practical parenting person, right? Like I named my consulting business Practical Parenting Consulting because I always said I will not tell someone else to do anything that I can't figure out how to do myself. I'm not into guilt-inducing recommendations, but and I've always said, who has time to read books, right? Like the irony of writing a book for newborns. People used to say, oh, when is the best time to read my Heading Home with Your Newborn book? And I would sometimes cringe because I'm like, probably before you have the newborn. Because if you already had it, then you can, and we designed the book. When I wrote that book, I specifically wrote it so that if you just wanted to know about what to do about a crying baby at 2 a.m, you could flip to page 200 and something and find the answer. You didn't have to read the whole book. Yeah. For this book, I was very aware of the fact that I did not have time to read any of this, watch TED Talks, go to conferences. And I certainly don't think that a majority of parents do, even as their kids get older, right? It's sort of my fortunate handcrafted, eclectic professional life that allows me to do that. But that's where I kept saying, oh my gosh, do people realize that the literature in preschool is almost exactly the same as like Harvard Business Review? Yeah. And everyone's like, yeah, but who would be reading both, right? Like who has time to read both?
Other than you, right?
Right. Now, this is where I amused myself because I didn't want to make this book very heavy, right? I went, who wants to read all this dense research and stuff? So I wrote it as in, what studies grabbed my attention? Like, are you serious? Wow. I always say kind of like cocktail conversation. Like, did you know that babies can do this? Did you know that new neuroimaging lets you see this on a baby's brain as they're doing? So I did that. But if you were to flip to the endnotes section of my book, I haven't even endnoted my past parenting books. Parents don't typically go look at endnotes, like which research study do. There's an equal mix between what I would say the bigger world, right? Business and innovation and leadership literature and psychology literature, and straight parenting, pediatrics, neuroscience. So it is probably the most eclectic mix of endnotes in a parenting book that you could come across, because I have not seen one that has a more of an eclectic mix. But I was sort of saying, I'm giving parents the Cliff Notes version, because you probably will not have time to read the number of books that I read and the articles and the studies and everything else in across all this wide range. That is what I tried to do for parents. So I'll put it together for you. And then if you're more interested, you can track it down and go read it for yourself, but you don't have to.
Yeah, I love it. That's amazing. So it's like you're fusing everything together from all these different places. And that's really what you did on your TED Talk too, just bringing together the world of business and parenting to find that cross section that really makes sense. And I think a lot of parents who are in business, who are going into business and who are creating or becoming entrepreneurs and this kind of thing, that it makes a lot of sense. What the skills that we need to succeed as adults are really essential for children to be learning right now.
Sure. The other point on that one, what's striking, for the purposes of writing a book, right? You can't be all over the place or else your audience goes way down. Who wants to hear about everything? And I thought, it was so striking to me when I talked to Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn. I was like, wow, everyone's watching innovation and everybody's watching, all these things happening and they're all intrigued. A lot of people are intrigued. So I'll pick up with that business analogy, right? Say, what is the workforce doing? What does, I'll give you an example. Peter Drucker in the business world has been recognized as one of the biggest thinkers of the last century, right? And he said, as we were entering the 21st century, we've come from a century of business management, and we are entering a century that will be based on self-management. And what I thought to myself, which I then put in the book, was right. And in my world, agreed, but in my world, a good self-management day is when no one bites their friends.
Right?
I mean, how is that different? How it's impulse control and self-control, except, oh, by the way, impulse control sounds good to anybody who's ever had a 2 or a 3-year-old, right? But it also is one of the core aspects of executive function skills, which are conveniently named because calling them executive function skills makes you think like an executive and the analogy works. But they're actually defined at a neuroscience level. Your brain's ability to, working memory, store things in your memory, be cognitively flexible, right? Your brain can switch gears based on things, right? And impulse control. That's what the neuroscience world is looking at. That's what all sorts of people are looking at. So all of a sudden we went from Peter Drucker, right? But when I think of that, I think about kids not biting each other. That's really a big step forward in self-management, right? And then we get straight into the neuroscience, which supports it. And again, by the way, peak rate of development of executive function skills, age 3 to 5. Right? That's why you would never dream of leaving a 2-year-old on the edge of a busy highway and saying, don't cross the street, and then walking away, right? But by the age of 5, you still probably would be smart not to do that, but you could have more faith that the child's not going to be as likely. That's impulse control. But that's why I tried to make it fun and practical. Like you could imagine it in your daily life, right?
Oh, yeah.
You will now, I would like to think, you could tell me if this works for you or not, that as you go about what you were doing anyways, you start to go, oh, active listening, that's a we skill, right? Relationships and perspective taking. When a 2-year-old dresses up in, or a 3-year-old in make-believe play, dresses up in other clothes and shoes, that's literally practicing to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, which, according to our current president, is what the country needs most of now, right? Like in the world, what we need is the ability to be able to walk in someone else's shoes and have empathy and take different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So excited to see your new book. And speaking of that, where can you tell us? I know you have a wonderful website and it has a lot of resources. And there's, I love the article you wrote about our parents training resilience and creativity out of their kids. And so there's more that we can get from all of your work and your wisdom and your collaborations that you've done.
Ooh. Sure. So, my website is just drlaurajana.com. So LauraJana. And I'm on Twitter at KidDocJana. So KIDDOCJANA. Right. And the book is available on Amazon. If you search just The Toddler Brain and Laura Jana, you'll come up with it there. And then I'm looking forward to actually getting to spend quite a bit of time in the upcoming year talking about it, meeting with people, working with people, everywhere from parenting to childcare to business. And in fact, I've actually gotten the opportunity to now really join the conversation about what does workforce development look like when everybody's interested in early learning, right? Early learning and lifelong learning, which are all based on these skills we've talked about.
I was just thinking the same thing, that, really what you're doing is so relevant and applicable to so many areas, because you're building future CEOs, future learners, future people that are going to be even more adaptable, creative, and able to handle, the fast-paced changing world.
Right. And you know what? For everybody who's a parent watching, I also defined CEO a little differently than it's been defined before, because I define it as Chief Engagement Officer. And I don't care whether you're the CEO of a company or the CEO of your family, everybody's discovering business literature, preschool literature, parenting literature, that engagement is the key. And that's all based on relationships and connecting and sort of focusing on those things. So it's very empowering, but I would suggest that we're all CEOs if we get this right.
Well, thank you again for everything that you've just talked about, and all of your enthusiasm and your passion in this work, and just your contribution to so many parents out there. It's just a wonderful service. And I love, what you addressed here about the nurturing that relationship between parent and child in our communities, and supporting parents is so important.
Well, thank you. And thank you for putting together this great topic of discussion, because it really is so important. So thank you. It was great to join you.
Great. Well, I really appreciate it. And I look forward to reading The Toddler Brain. Can't wait to get that. It will be very applicable to me and my 4th and 5th toddler. Like, we still have so much to learn, and so that's really exciting. And again, I appreciate your time being here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else you are going to be creating in the future, and all of the good stuff that's coming.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks.